Hello and welcome to episode 324 of the Crate and Crowbar, a PC gaming podcast being recorded on the 21st of May. I'm Marsh Davis and I'm joined this evening by Chris Thurston.
Hello, I'm very sorry. I've just downed a massive cup of tea and I think I'm about to burp.
And Alex Wiltshire.
Good evening. I don't have a cup of tea, but I do have some water.
Excellent. Can you bring up some kind of bubbly liquid from your stomach? Or
I can on
make
this
any kind of
sultry,
noises?
in this sultry environment. Yes.
Beautiful.
Oh, bad ASMR line just gets worse and worse.
Is there any PC gaming news this week?
No.
Oh.
Hey, but hang on. I thought you've been playing some PC gaming news, Marty.
I have, that's right. Yeah, PC gaming news we mentioned a couple of weeks ago was the upcoming launch of Amazon's first foray into video gaming in the form of hero shooter Crucible. And that foray has now been launched.
Forayed.
Forayed into reality. And
Thanks, Jeff Bezos.
Yeah, well, is thanks really the right response?
You and I played some Crucible already, Marsh.
Yeah, we did.
We did, yeah. And what was your predominant feeling? Was it a big hearty foray or
more of a throw?
Oh.
Yeah, I don't want to be too mean about it because I feel like the spirit in which it's been launched is probably more as an early access game, even if that hasn't been the way its launch has been presented. But it feels like something that is not finished and will continue to evolve, and that should probably be fine. But at the same time, I did kind of expect it to emerge with all of Amazon's money behind it into something a bit more polished. Even if it wasn't my kind of game, I thought they would have thrown so much money at it that, for example, the UI would work.
Tell me first. Tell me what this Crucible thing is. I have not been paying much attention to this, I must confess.
Yeah, so like I said, it's a hero shooter, but I mean that doesn't really give you the full scope of what it intends to be. And part of its problem is that it doesn't really know what it intends to be. It feels like they spent a lot of time taking the development in different directions and then sort of sewed the different experiments together and released it. So it's this sort of uncomfortable mismatch of hero shooter whereby you pick individual heroes who have their own very defined skill sets and biologies and cartoon styles, and they're thrust into a huge map, sort of battle royale style, and then there is a PvE element as well, where there are mobs around the level which you can harvest XP from to level up internally within those individual matches. And then there's sort of boss monsters which you have to kill, and then you take their hearts. And at the same time, there's another team doing the same thing. So it's got this sort of MOBA aspect to it, as well as being a sort of. There's also a battle royale mode separate to this, and it has these defined character sets which you probably more likely associate with a more focused sort of game, a bit like Overwatch, and all of those things. I haven't played hours and hours of this. I don't know, probably 3-4 hours. So I don't have a sense of how well all those characters are balanced together. But my initial reaction to it is that it has enough sort of larger scale problems that I'm a slightly skeptical that it can actually come together without some major changes. I mean, how do you feel about it, Chris?
I think that is correct. It feels. It's interesting because the kind of the meta structures of it, like the battle pass and the set of skins and things, which are all very, very closely modeled after other successful games like Fortnite and Apex Legends, particularly actually, do feel finished and ready for launch. It doesn't feel like a beta test in that sense. However, I think you're completely right that its core game doesn't feel like a answered question, and I appreciate that that is me coming at this with super dry game producer terminology now, but like it feels like they have built this thing out in a few different directions, both in terms of mechanically and in terms of the characters and things, and then had to kind of collapse it all into a set of game modes that kind of work. So it feels like, for example, that 4v4 mode where you're fighting to destroy these boss monsters and claim their hearts has what feels like tons of fairly unintuitive issues straight away. Like the fact that when you respawn, you do so at a random point around the edge of the map. And then you often have these very, very lengthy periods of running back to where the fight is in order to return to the fight, which is often the thing that tips a win into a loss or vice versa due to so essentially run back time or respawn time is the metric by which people are able to claim an objective and win the game, which is very similar to a MOBA, except a MOBA is kind of designed to funnel that in a particular direction. This is an omnidirectional battle royale map, or at least a map that feels like it was designed for battle royale first and then had this mechanic pasted onto it. Similarly, characters have traversal mechanics, but that feel like in some cases that they were designed for a much smaller map. So the character that I was playing a ton of, she uses flamethrowers, and she can use flamethrowers to jet herself around, which is cool. But it all applies to a heat bar. And there is, like, I would say that it's quite nicely animated, and there's some satisfaction figuring out how to chain those abilities together. But this is just a microcosmic example, but like a heat bar is quite a punitive mechanic. It puts you in a bad state for overdoing it, and and that's fine in a combat encounter where like juggling your cooldown is how the key to playing the character to well. But also you generate heat by using a heat blast to kind of leap through the air or soar close fast to the objective. And the game puts you under tremendous pressure to cover distance quickly, or else you're simply not participating at all. Like there is no game for you to play unless you can get there fast. And so the fact that it puts you in that one set of decisions, that one set of circumstances which feel like they stem from completely unrelated decisions creates a really common scenario with that character where you're constantly burning out your overheat bar to try and get to the fun faster. And then even if you balance it right, you're probably going to arrive there either late or with barely any of your heat bar available, which means you can barely do anything. And so
it's definitely
all I would say to finish that point is it's like this is when I last spoke about this game on my fears for it. That's kind of exactly what I'm worried about. That's 3 different sets of like game design, from like traversal mechanics to cooldown management as a gameplay feature to sort of map or to like sort of strategic rhythm and how quickly I'm going to sound like such a dickhead saying this, how quickly players get back to the fun or find the fun in what's going on and get a chance to participate in it again, how quickly players are allowed to iterate on their own performance and take another stab at it. Things that are super key to these kinds of games, and it just feels like it doesn't work. And I think when those things are wrong, that's what creates this feeling of like, I'm not quite sure what this is. Because none of your pathways into it are reliably delivering you to a single experience that makes cohesive sense and is repeatable. And when that happens, I think that is ultimately what kills these games. So it's quite worrying, honestly. Like I just don't think it's there yet.
Yeah, I think it's definitely those traversal mechanics that sort of speak to the major problem that this game has, or at least it speaks to the fact that I think the characters and their abilities were designed for, like you say, much smaller encounters, possibly on flat terrain.
Right.
And they have just been transposed into this gigantic, very organic, incoherent feeling geography. And they're not. It's not just that you have to use your pool of sort of cooldown points, whatever that is. Some characters have heat as one of their restrictions, other characters have different restrictions, but just you have to use that simply to get to where the combat is, because your traversal mechanics often consume from that same pool. But the traversal mechanics just aren't suited to the geography that you're traversing. So one of the characters has this sort of, a lot of the characters actually have a sort of sudden boost thing. The character I was playing last night with you in one of our matches was Earl, who's this giant sort of, I don't know, alien troll thing, who cares? But he sort of boosts forward in this uncontrollable way. But because the train isn't flat, he's constantly kind of just jittering against everything. Like he's catching on everything, he's clipping into everything. And it's like, well, that can't be how that was intended, you know?
Yeah.
And then there's another character who has a grappling hook. And just it doesn't seem to follow any logic what surfaces can be grappled. Some of them just can't be grappled at all. Many of them are just out of range. What range is your grappling hook, and what good is it if you can't actually grapple onto anything above or around you? It feels like that was designed for an environment which was much smaller, which had ceilings, for example.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you're in environments which are sort of these broken caves, basically.
Mhm.
And you'd think, oh, okay, well, that's obviously why the grappling hook is there. It's because I can hook onto this thing above me. But then you fire up, and turns out, yeah, no, the grappling hook fires out and then disappears because it's out of range, and then you can't get out of the situation and you're dead. That is obviously a sign that that mechanic was designed for something other than its current implementation.
Yeah, right. It's other things as well. Like, so yeah, as you said, it wants you to do this PvE stuff, and there's the implication that you're making decisions about whether to pursue the main objective straight away or level up on this, to in order to win more fights later on, that kind of thing. But that's very, very hard to see expressed in the way fights actually turn out because there's so much else going on. Similarly, there's a lot of distracting things on the map. There's lots of different features and things to go and find and monsters to fight and stuff like that. But ultimately, a lot of fights are going to come down to weight of numbers and respawn times and run back times. So it feels, just based on a small amount of play relative to anything else, that the team that runs around together will probably win most of the time. But that directly fights the kind of openness of the thing. And so you're fighting a negative rather than trying to embrace a positive. Your success is based on characters not getting distracted and wander off. Because also, the PvE stuff, they're going and fighting monsters. One player can do it, two players can do it, the whole team can do it, but it doesn't feel like you'd hit, like, I don't know, something that would feel logical to me, like a boss monster, an optional boss monster that will give your team a huge buff, Roshan or the League of Legends Dragon style, that you need to take on together and strategize around. Like, that would be a logical way to bring people together, but that isn't present. And in its place, there's this thing you do at the beginning of the game before you kind of drop in initially. You can make some choices about your character's level up tree for that game. So you make choices in advance with not very much information about how your character will level up, rather than choosing things from the tree when you level up. You pre-bake your route to your character's particular progression tree. And then you also see what events are in play, which will be things like health things that spawn, or other kind of traps that spawn, and things like this in different parts of the map, which is kind of interesting, but doesn't seem that important, because the overwhelming important thing is, can you run back to the fight fast enough? Like, that appears to be the only real measure of what dictates which way a game goes, really. And I want, and that in turn feels like a legacy of a different version of this game again. When Crucible was first announced, and I think I said this on the previous podcast, it was announced as a game that would be tightly integrated with Twitch. And this is a complete guess, but it feels like things like, these events that are outlined at the beginning of the game, traps, health spawns, things like this that drop into the game, that feels to me like that was the hook, where someone would vote on Twitch and it would deposit a health thing that the teams could rush to go and claim, that kind of thing. That I can understand, and then immediately kind of like see all the reasons that doesn't work, or isn't interesting. But it isn't interesting for people, but that's probably what that was there for. And it feels, but like, what's there when you remove that? Why is it important? It probably isn't. And it's like, yeah, it's such a, I don't mean to dunk on it too hard, because there's some kind of quite nice character designs, and like I said, it's nicely animated, and it's like, it's all right, but it's kind of like, my prediction is that there's probably too much money behind it for it to simply die. Although there's it's already got pretty negative reviews on Steam. There's a chance here that they go like, whoop, this was out too early, some public mea culpas, and it gets yoinked again. which I think would be enormously demoralizing for everybody involved, but it's probably the right decision. The alternative is it sort of limps along. I'm saying this as if it's not possible that it's a massive success, but actually, even if it's only been a very, very short amount of time, you can usually tell. And this is not a good start. And it doesn't seem like the kind of start that creates a phenomena, right? If you compare this to the amount of hype that was generated around Valorant, for example, which is in a similar space in some ways, it's not comparable given the resources involved, the companies involved. And so, yeah, like I suspect it will limp along, and its ongoing development, which it needs, will happen in the public eye. There will probably be a point where they redo the entire map or they overhaul it. And at that point, you get it's actually quite good now. They fixed it 6 months from now, a year from now. And maybe a following kind of drifts back to it. But has that ever actually happened?
Yes, Fortnite.
Well,
Fortnite is
sure,
literally the example of that.
Right, but that was a complete reinvention. Like,
yeah, I kind of think that's what it needs to some extent. I don't think its parts are going to ever come together. They're pulling in different directions.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the thing about, I mean, maybe because you're a MOBA fan, so maybe you can speak to this more. But I find that because the characters are so differentiated, some are clearly designed as support characters, and others are obviously glass cannons, etc. They need each other. Like they need each other to be a competent fighting force, and so having players solo doesn't seem highly viable, which means the staggered spawn times just means that unless your team are together or you can get back to your team quickly, then there's no game there to be had. You're basically doomed, and you don't control where you spawn in. You can choose spawn points, but whether those spawn points are available or not does not seem to be in your control, and I don't know what affects that. Sometimes the only spawn points that would be available would be miles away, so you have no choice but to end up trickling in one after the other and getting destroyed. But I mean, that is a thing that you can force in Dota, right? In order to disrupt another team, is to force them to spawn irregularly. Why is that good in MOBAs but feels awful here?
In a MOBA, it's called kind of catching people off tempo, and it usually means or pushing. So often, you think of it as tempo control, which often comes down to who's dictating the pace of the match, and that's often set by kills and follow-up kills, etc. So if for example my team kills someone from your team, but then you manage to come back and kill someone from my team, you've reset the tempo because now we're both waiting on a respawn. Whereas if I can force the second one from you, the reason it works is there's a few reasons. One of them is kills can take place while characters are doing predictable activities in the open world. Maybe they're laning or they're off in the jungle or something like this. But kills disrupt a kind of business of the game that is fairly predictable, rather than the teams, as in Crucible, being pulled from one point of interest to another as blobs, basically. The ultimate points of interest in a MOBA are the bases, and the bases are also where you respawn. So one thing that means is that defending teams or teams that are on the back foot effectively have shorter respawn times, because even if their respawns are the same, their runbacks are a hell of a lot shorter. So and that's not the case when what is effectively the ancient in Crucible is spawns in a random place in the world. And as you say, the really confusing respawn system puts you any distance away. And I think the effect of this on the game from a meta sense is actually really predictable. It makes characters with more sustainable movement mechanics, like speedy characters, just better, I think. Like, I actually wouldn't be surprised if a balanced team was the correct way to play Crucible currently at all. I think if you could pick more than one of the same character, you would just pick the fastest character 4 times and you'd win, because that is such a overwhelming that's such an overwhelming issue. Like, if it doesn't matter what your kit is or what your contribution is or what your skill level is as a player, none of it matters if you can't be present. And in a MOBA, I'll use Dota as an example. There are ways to create drama out of that phenomenon. So, for example, there are famous moments in competitive Dota where a game has been lost on the fact that someone somewhere manages to cancel someone's teleport scroll animation at the right time, which is an item that you can spend to teleport yourself back to base or to another building. If you cancel it, it has like it used to, well, maybe it doesn't work the same anymore, but it used to have like a minute cooldown. And if you're casting it and it gets cancelled, the cooldown is still kicked in. So you've taken away that person's ability to teleport for 60 seconds, which can be enough to turn the tide of a game. But the important thing about that is it was kind of all interactive. Like the character chose to use their teleport scroll, and maybe they chose to use it in a place where they weren't particularly well hidden, and another player was smart enough to find them and cancel it. And so they, players interacted in a particular way that enabled something to happen. In this, it's just you died, which is a thing that happens. And then your spawn point was far away because it was, and it's not really sure why that was. And then you happen to be playing a character who can only go a certain speed, so guess what? You're not making it back in time. And I remember this happened to us in the last game we played, where it looked like we were winning because we were going to claim the last heart to win, but then the enemy team got the drop on you and me. Our teammates are a little bit too far away to help. They beat us. Our teammates arrived, but they trickled in, so they died. And then it was like, it doesn't really, nothing. Even though you and I were like sat on waiting to respawn, and there's like maybe a minute left in the game, it literally didn't matter what we did at that point because there was no way for us to even participate in the next. There would be no next battle because it was at the point of fait accompli. And I think that is such a critical issue with a game like this, because if you should never, in an action game, a competitive action game, you should never have a point where it really doesn't matter what you do. Like, even in the Counter-Strike model, where you can be in a situation, and I appreciate this sort of comes from Valorant as well, but where you can be in a situation where you're too late to the bomb site and the bomb is definitely going to go off. The design of the game still creates space for you to, for example, try and kill more enemies to mean they lose their guns, so they get behind on economy before they win, even though the win is inevitable, or you run to save your own equipment so that you at least have an equipment advantage in the next round. Like, good games like this have interesting decisions that players can make even in the bleakest situations, and just this one respawn system and the size of the map means it's just not there, which is, man, it's not, it's the sort of thing that you shouldn't release a game like that. I think that's a super damning, but yeah.
What's the heritage of this game and the studio? The studio's called Relentless, isn't it? But it's an internal Amazon studio. Who are the people behind it? Does it have anybody who's worked on this kind of game before?
Yeah, so I think I don't know about this particular kind of game. I think I took a cursory look at the credits last night, and one of the lead designers appears to be have some heritage in the MMO space. I think he worked on Guild Wars 2, amongst other things. But I don't know. I don't know what these things say about the project as a whole, because I mean it's got to have been quite a difficult thing for a company with no video game experience to suddenly build a studio to make a hit game. So basically what I'm saying is I wouldn't peg the game's current state too heavily on the people who are making it. Like, it's not necessarily their fault. This is just
right. Yeah. Also, actually, I think the MMO thing is the other comparison I would make. It does feel quite a lot like WoW Arena or Guild Wars PvP. Now that you mention that, there are definite comparisons there. But it's, again, those games feel designed for a much narrower space than this is. Like, Guild Wars PvP is traditionally quite a tight kind of arena, experience that is played in rounds as well. Whereas, yeah, man, it's kind of interesting. Like, I wonder if the spawning boss monsters are designed to pull you from, to turn different parts of the map into the real arena, if that makes sense. But it doesn't really work that way because players don't arrive at the same time. Man, it's weird. Super weird.
That map also just does not feel like it was designed for this purpose either. Just the way that it's framed, which is it's this huge sort of alien organic space. It's not. It doesn't have enough distinct landmarks to make it easily navigable. I say this as somebody who's not overly familiar with it, so maybe that would change. But it's certainly not as instinctively navigable as the new, the Warzone's map, for example,
Yeah,
or any of the
way
Battle
bigger
Royale
as well.
maps. Yeah, and the landmarks it does have are obscured because the sight lines, there aren't necessarily that generous of sight lines down it, because it's this organic space which uses a lot of caves, and it's just sort of hemmed in irregularly by giant blue glowing walls, and it feels like that feels like a territory from maybe an MMO or a single player game that has just been sort of cropped and hemmed in. There's one part of it just along the border where this blue wall, the terrain near the blue wall suddenly drops off, and there's this sliver of the map which is just a death drop, and you go into it, and it's your character sort of floats in the air for a few seconds, wobbling, and then dies. And like nowhere else on the map, as far as I could tell, is there a death drop. It's just in this tiny little crevice that seems just like it was.
Yeah, I mean, I was genuinely very impressed when you managed to fall down the only hole in the world.
Yeah, well, it's because I didn't expect it to be there. I expected to be able to
reasonably.
go up because, I mean, what's the point of having a giant blue wall if that is not actually the thing that stops you going to the edge of the map?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a very kind of incoherent space, and that also adds to the problem of the respawn times, because it's just difficult to just orient yourself as well as to physically get to the fight on time.
Yeesh. Yeah, I feel for him. Yeah, it's like, but like we said when we first discussed it, when they sort of revealed it, like, it's such a tough proposition to make a game like this work unless you have a really clear selling point. And I don't think that selling point necessarily has to be easily articulated. Like, obviously, it's really good to be able to do the Tom Francis thing of, crafting a really punchy elevator pitch for a game that, makes for a perfect first line for a Steam store or something like that. That's not always necessary. Not every game comes from that. But you need people to come away from their first match, like, excited to play again, even if they only got a glimpse of what's possible. You know what I mean? Like, whether it's a desire for mastery or something like that. Like, I went into my second game of this because I was so bemused by the first one that I was sure I should have missed something, or must have missed. That this time I will understand why it is like this, and I didn't really, which is yeah.
Marsh, what's your review of the characters?
Well, so first blush, which we talked about last week when there was more of a sort of character reveal, I thought they were quite bad. Well, let me caveat that by saying I think the artists who've executed them are very talented, but I feel like they've been directed to create things which aren't super interesting. Like, I feel they've been shackled to an intention to create things which have a requisite number of bullet points. Like you have the robot character, you have the character who is basically Rocket Raccoon from Guardians of the Galaxy, you have the soldier who is in no way more remarkable than just being a soldier. He's called Mendoza, because he is a man. He's a man dozer.
He's
And
a
then
man who makes you go asleep.
there's a big Brutus with the chain gun. It's just ticking off a lot of things that feel incredibly tawdry. Yet there has been an effort to make the characters ethnically and gender diverse, and there are sort of accents to the characters which I think reveal sort of a bit of an ingenuity. And if you, on the character select screen, if you click on the characters repeatedly, they sort of give out a large number of different voice lines explaining their backstory. And one of those backstories made me chuckle a little bit. There was a good joke in there.
So it's more, I was born in a lab. I was experimenting on drugs. Is it like that?
Sort of, but it's actually more meta. Like, all of them, nearly all of them have some sort of meta joke about being clicked on because you're clicking on them. And the first time I saw that, I was like, oh yeah. And then I realized that all the characters do that. I was like, oh yeah, okay.
I mean, to be fair, you're going to nick anything from Blizzard, nick that. Like,
yeah. But
yeah.
the bug character is got is well voiced and has a good joke in her character description. The rest of them, though, I don't know. Didn't feel like there was a lot going on. I wasn't tugged into the story. There's some overarching story about unity, which appears to be some sort of, would-be utopian, or is it fascist, intergalactic organization of some sort, oppressing / liberating people.
It's if you're utopian government, space government, the first thing they explain how to do is to crack open an otherwise innocent space turtle so that you can consume its essence. Then you're probably in Avatar territory here, like it's definitely got that vibe. I will say though, Captain Mendoza or whatever his name is, his tagline, his like MOBA style descriptor is the Unity Man, which I think is intended to reflect his allegiance with this, space fascist government or something. But to me, it just makes it sound like a man we got from the Unity asset store, which could also be true. I did also think there was it was kind of interesting that they decided to take the shark boy from Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that made everybody horny and make him an edgy 90s comic book cyborg.
Yeah. He is the I asked you this last night. What's the name of the goth skull boy from
Reaper.
Overwatch? Reaper. Yeah, he's very much Crucible's Reaper.
You gotta have one, or else the edgy boys will wander off into the wilderness. And you will not have a bountiful harvest come Q4.
Yeah. There are some. I mean, there's some other interesting characters. I think I forgot what his name is. There's one character who has a robot pal who can be sent off separate. Something and Brother is the name of the character. I forget what, but
all I knew is
that seems like an interesting dynamic.
Yeah, Something and Brother does make him sound like an artisan pizza restaurant.
Yeah,
it does IPAs. But hey, at least it feels modern.
Yeah. In fact, I mean, there's probably a comparison between staging a hero shooter inside a MOBA environment and serving a milkshake inside a bucket or something like that. It's the Soho way.
Not anymore, it isn't, because you can't Deliveroo that. Thanks, Jeff. I think that's all we can say.
I've been playing a game as well.
I
didn't play that game, but I've been playing Jet Lancer. Have you heard of Jet Lancer?
Yeah.
No.
I've seen GIFs of it. It looks very nice.
Yeah, it's a very gify game. It's a side-on kind of arcadey, aeroplane-y shooter game. It's a bit like Luftrausers, very similar seeming to Luftrausers, certainly in the GIFs, where it's kind of big explosions and lots of screen shake and pixel looks, but much more colourful. And I probably played it about an hour or something, and it's very diverting. It's a very nice little game. I killed a great big robotic water demon, dragon, I suppose you'd call it, that curled up into the sky and went round and round in circles and things. And I shot it with my shooty guns and my rockety rockets, and it was good.
I'm pleased for you and for it.
It's a funny one. Like I thought that I was expecting it to be very Luftrausers, and as I was playing, I was thinking, God, this is really Luftrausers. So I thought I'd play Luftrausers again for the first time for quite a while now, and it's very different to Luftrausers. Did you play Luftrausers?
I've played lots of Luftrausers.
Yeah, I did as well. It's amazing how quickly you forget the things that make it Luftrausers as opposed to just another sort of side-on shooter.
R-Type or
yeah, like it's this sort of sense of thrust and sort of you're constantly moving up and down relative to the air, to the ground. You get a real sense of that. And when you dip into it's the sea in that case, and you've got a sort of a second or so as this kind of damage circle kind of closes in before you destruct if you go into the sea. But if you can bounce out of the sea fast enough, you'll be fine. And the damage you get kind of also decreases that circle, around you, showing that it's basically a health thing, and it sort of then it moves back out again, sort of recharging, once you're out of danger. Those really tight sort of systems like this. This is like a Jet Lancer is much more conventional. Like you have 3 hits, like 3 sort of hearts that damage is dealt with. It deals with the hitting ground thing with I thought I didn't realize until a little way into it, but basically if you go near the ground at the start of the game, you'll be sort of automatically steered back up into the sky again, which can be quite disorientating because you think that you're kind of getting a bead on an enemy, and then suddenly you're kind of being zoomed upwards and out of the way. But it turns out that that's one of its modules. So this is a game in which as you play through its missions, you get new modules for abilities and different weapons and things. And this thing that makes you avoid hitting the ground is one of those modules, so you can actually switch it off, which is pretty neat. But another thing I forgot about Love Trousers is like the huge variability in the different ships you can have, because you can change the hulls and the weapons. Like you sort of get these great lumping kind of things that sort of fire massive gouts of bullets all over the place. And this one, I don't know, I haven't unlocked that many modules yet, but I'd be surprised if the modules make you feel anything other than this sort of live kind of dodgy dodgy sort of ship that you are from the start, like zipping about. Like there isn't the sort of lumpy sort of round kind of bullet beast that you can get in Love Trousers. Which is exactly the sort of thing I like to be.
I can't believe you just said the phrase lumpy beast in your Love Trousers.
Yeah.
We've been dancing around some real cracking sentences just because Love Trousers is fun to say. But I'm glad I didn't ruin it earlier, because you really, really drove this one home. I'm very proud of you.
Oh, another thing that this one that Jet Lancer does is it's got a dodge roll where you can hit a button and you can dodge through bullets and things, like just a few invincibility frames.
Nice.
And that is nice. And that is the big differentiator. This is a game in which once you're past the first few missions, the screen is pretty much full of bullets and ships and lasers and sky dragon things, and you're just dodging all the time, and it's not on a cooldown as far as I can tell, so you could be pretty laissez-faire with it. It's a nice game, and it's fully sort of, it's got a story and it's got characters. It's got a bit too much text, the conversations are a bit too long, and I don't care about them enough, and that kind of thing. There's another thing actually. The 2 little really, really minor bugbears. These are so irrelevant, but they just really get on me. So this is like a one of the indie games which follows the Nintendo thing of coloring text in dialogue to draw attention, like the classic Nintendo way. The classic, I think it was established in Zelda or something. It was classically developed to point your attention towards a thing you're meant to be doing or a place you're meant to be going. Hey, don't worry about reading it all. That's the thing you need to care about, In this one, it seems to use it just for emphasis or for for italicization without italics. It's really odd. Completely random words like D-O, that was highlighted red, and the only one in quite a big paragraph. No idea why. Presumably I was meant to read it like do or something. I don't know. It's really odd. And the second thing is it's a pixel game, but with a lot of the UI is full res, and I have issues with that, but I appreciate a lot of people don't, and and that it's a style thing, and that's cool. But in this one, the font they use for the dialogue, it's Google's Roboto. It's the one you get in Gmail. And I don't like I don't like playing Gmail game. I don't like that. Do you not find that typefaces kind of take you to the places where they're the most depressingly used? This is just me, isn't it?
It is just you, but
You're being very polite.
kind of sympathise.
But it's like, I don't know, you kind of they've gone to a lot of effort to make this kind of very colourful world. It's like very Sega-y blue skies and equally Sega-y blue water. It's got this sort of Super Nintendo Mode 7-y feel to the parallaxy backgrounds. So they kind of go off in this plane of, that sort of pseudo 3D looking plane of kind of very blocky textures if into the distance. And it's got, a background layer of horizon which has huge destroyed structures and mountains and things in it.
Nice.
Like, there's a lot of kind of care gone into it. But then there are this sort of, and then the animations at the start, there's the sort of cutscenes and things are really nicely done, zooming through tunnels and colourful stuff, and but the
fonts.
Gmail font
3 out of 10.
3 out of 10. Fuck it.
I bet that's a localization thing though.
Probably is.
Because finding pixel fonts that have all the characters for other alphabets is very, very, very hard.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a pixel font. I'd accept it if it was a lesser known Google font. Google Fonts font. I mean, yeah. But it's but that is such a minor thing, as I'm sure everybody listening is going, "What the fuck? Why is he?"
No, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. But it's a good game, and I recommend it. Jet Lancer, he's nice.
Shame about the fonts.
Lufthansa's crashed on me though. I don't think it's been updated in a long time, so I wonder whether it's long in the tooth.
Oh dear. A misfire from the lumpy beast in your love trousers there. Shall we do some questions from questions?
Yes.
I just thought I'd make a noise. I'm sorry.
Okay. I thought the Goal Squad had taken you, Chris.
I'll never. Not with NVIDIA RTX as my ally.
Colin writes, Dear Byronic Commandos, Deep Rock Galactic released this week on May the 13th. And I was surprised by the lack of mainstream coverage. This game is an early access success story, and it's loaded with charm, lore, and inventive game mechanics. I'd argue that it offers a satisfying co-op experience as games like Left 4 Dead or Destiny. As a personal challenge, I dare you to play DRG with a friend or two and not feel something tickle in your black hearts. But I feel gloomy about all the attention and free publicity that gaming sites give IPs like Anthem, a cynical Frankenstein disaster of a game, which goes to show how heavily the scales favour for the AAA developers. And it makes me sad, Colin. Well,
makes me sad, Colin, or is that from Com?
It's from Colin.
Okay.
Makes me sad,
Colin. Makes me sad, Colin. Well, I think that's not necessarily, again, a fair characterization of exactly why those games get different levels of coverage. I think one of the things developers need to be aware of if they go the early access path is that they, unless there's some phenomenal reason to recover it, sites will necessarily exhaust their coverage desires the first time you go out the gate. It would really take a sort of significant change for sites to be driven to really roll out the party bus again when you are released for a second time. And similarly, it's not really, I mean, I agree that there's probably mileage in a gameplay comparison between Deep Rock Galactic and Anthem, but Anthem was also a fated game from a storied team that people wanted to see the next thing from, and then that means that even when it's a failure, it's a notable failure that people want to hear about. So it doesn't surprise me that it gets a ton of coverage. Like, it's newsworthy, basically. A different game being bad would not have been newsworthy in the same way.
Yeah, it's the truth. And it also doesn't take away from the fact that Deep Rock Galactic is, when I played it, when it first came out in early access, it's really fun, super fun. I really, really enjoyed it. And we should really play it, the three of us.
I'll be a dwarf with you, Alex.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd love to be a dwarf with you.
I'll get Beardy in space.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, all right.
I remember the coolest stuff that the thing that I really loved about it was, well, there were two things. The first thing was throwing a flare down into a dark hole and just watching it light up the sides of the kind of the cavern as it falls down. That was so good. And lighting up a cavern by just, throwing successive flares around it to so you can see where all the precious ores that you're going to claim from it. And the second thing was making sure the mining path that you dig down is something that you can, because you have to, so the idea of the game is that you go down into the mine and you get as much stuff and then you make your way back out again, taking the path that you set to begin with. And if you dug yourself a shit path that you can't get back out of very easily, you may well have screwed yourself for getting home. And that was a really good feeling. The kind of decisions you made at the start have an effect later on. It was really cool.
Sold.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'll be up for that. Sounds like a good. Maybe this weekend we could.
Yeah, Space Dwarf weekend.
Space Dwarf weekend.
It's Coffee Stain, isn't it? Who do they in Coffee Stain make it or they publish it? Right? They publish it.
Maybe. Yes, I think they publish it, but it's by a studio. It's I think Swedish studio. I interviewed them a long time ago for Rock Paper Shotgun about its design. But yeah, they are nice people if I remember correctly. Or they might be horrible because I might be misremembering.
Wow.
That's my insight.
I know that Daniel Kaplan, a friend of mine who used to work at Mojang, has something to do with it. So I won't necessarily be impartial. It's a very nice man. And wears incredibly tight cycling pants.
You might be misremembering that, Marty.
Tight cycling pants, you say?
Tight cycling pants, yes. His own love trousers. Honestly, you could see everything. It was quite shocking. In a work environment. In other contexts, it would be fine.
Cycling, for example.
Tom writes in, Dear Cravens, Crowbars and Corvids assorted. Having loved sorcery and 80 days, I was really excited to play Heaven's Vault. I can live out my archaeologist fantasies. Learning to translate an ancient forgotten language sounded great. I can be confident that there would be a good story. But this is one of the most frustrating games I've ever played. It's so hard to work with. You have to fill the camera into just the right place to interact with the environment. Walking around is slow, and the rules about where you can walk feel so arbitrary. And then you're paired with the world's most annoying robot, who, when you discover a single artifact about a minute into what is clearly a crucial location, stops you to ask if you want to leave now, and then does this every time. And just as I was getting hooked by the story, really getting into the translation, pushing through the boring parts, I went back for another look at a location, and it railroaded me into the end game, with huge parts of the plot unexplored and unexplained. Done. I was furious it took my choice away. And so, of course, I immediately started again. It has a Game Plus mode where the translations get more complex, which is nice. But there are games I loved with great replayability that really deserve a second playthrough that I've never touched since the first time. What shameful life decisions have you guys made due to rage? Thanks for the pod. He also has a PS and a PPS saying he loves Little Grey Cells and he wants to thank you, Chris and Pip. Even if you never come back to it, you helped us find something truly wonderful. And the PPS is probably ages ago. I'm pretty sure Chris said he loved getting the band back together trope. Have you come across Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames? It's like what if bands of mercenaries were treated and behaved like classic rock bands. It's great fun.
That sounds fun. Yeah, we get a few messages about Little Grey Cells, and we should try. I don't know. I'm done making promises for what we'll have the bandwidth to do, particularly right now. But
yeah,
thank you for the nice words. They were nice. What was the question?
Have you made any shameful life decisions due to rage? But I mean, I think probably getting out of things which get us in legal trouble. Maybe we should focus that on game-related rage incidents, or indeed a simple response to Heaven's Vault, if you have one. I have to say, I agreed with all of his criticisms. I was deeply, deeply engaged by the archaeological aspect and the translation aspect of the game, but I found I was fighting every other aspect of the game and its interactions just to get to those parts, and in the end I had to give up, as much as I liked those bits.
I do wonder. I didn't finish Heaven's Vault, and I feel bad for not finishing it because obviously I really respect what it was setting out to do, and indeed what it achieved to a great extent. I do wonder, and I know that Pip got a lot out of it, but I do wonder about the utility of it being a 3D game.
Yeah.
I don't know if we discussed this at the time, but the other day I was sort of daydreaming about what that game would have been like as a more traditional, like 2D point and click adventure on either pre-rendered or drawn, art backgrounds. And it does feel like, because so much of the fun of that game was cerebral and based on interfaces, I don't think I would have missed the ability to walk around a 3D environment on relatively fixed paths at all, really, or even sort of isometric Little Big Adventure style. It just feels like there were perhaps more efficient ways of delivering what they were going for. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my mild take.
Yeah.
So as it might be clear from that mild take, I don't really experience rage. But I assume it all has to go somewhere, and I appreciate that I probably do at least encounter the things that should prompt it, and so one can only assume that it will come out eventually.
Bottle it up, that's what I say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Bury it very deep down.
Yeah. Have it etch away at the very core of your being for years and years and years until there's nothing but a black ichor in the center of your being. And
well, I mean, like, my therapist hasn't found it yet, and he's like pro at this. Right?
Really poking for it.
Yeah, exactly. Some of those deep rock galactic dwarves just going to town trying to find that deep vein. And nope.
I solve this by being permanently angry at everything. So I
I have you've got
both a diffuse level of rage, which is permanent, and a really pent up level of rage. So I like to think I occupy the rage.
So you put away a little bit in the bank while also spending it willy nilly. So...
Yeah. I'm angry right now. I don't even know why.
Like a kettle in a volcano. Oh, incredible. What healthy emotional lives we lead with regard to the media we consume.
I did notice actually that ages and ages ago when we were talking about The Hunt, the greatest game of all time, Hunt Showdown, I was saying I didn't find that it made me angry because I felt the circumstances in which I died were generally so vastly out of my control because the people I was fighting were way better than me, that I didn't really... it felt more like being hit by lightning than anything that was my fault. But as I've got better at the game, I've definitely got a lot angrier at it.
Well, I have to say that the last time we played Hunt, you died in a way that was so spectacular. I don't think anything will ever top it.
That was pretty special for me as well.
Honestly incredible. I might need to upload the clip because having in a 1v3 scenario where most people would be expected to die, not only did you kill all three of them and then yourself in a true last stand fashion, but you did it while, as far as I could tell, like piano rolling down your own hotkeys, equipping every different item you were holding, like fucking Bugs Bunny or something, before throwing a grenade at your own feet, killing the final cowboy, and leaping to your death for no reason. It was genuinely spectacular. Yeah,
I survived everything and then sprained my ankle to death, which is the most ignominious way I could have concluded that
honestly
fight.
It was heroic. I was like, obviously your survival would have meant we could have continued with the game, but
no, I was glad I died.
If we're going to go, let's go like that,
Yeah, I mean, despite wiping that team, nothing I did there was evidenced any prowess whatsoever. It was only because of the inordinate incompetence of my opponents that I survived that long.
I don't think that's wholly true. I understand what Jim says when he says that you have a beast mode. Like you Like you fire a lot and not all of them hit, but occasionally it's like 2 calculated gut shots that kill the person who's charging you down with a bayonet or something. You know what I mean? Like there's a killer lurking in there, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, it doesn't come out very often, I have to say. That was the first time in a long time that I actually killed anybody, because just we go through these cycles where the matchmaking pits us against people who are so vastly above our level. Even if the game says that they are only a level or 2 levels above us, in terms of their elo, they have like a kill death ratio which is like 5. You know, they literally kill 5 times as many people as they are killed themselves, and I have a kill death ratio of something like 0.8, which is I don't know why I'm against them. Like I'm
Right.
clearly not good enough because they always kill me. But I think what happens is that there must be some sort of elasticity to the elo, such that it or rather not elasticity. Sorry, it doesn't depreciate as quickly as it appreciates. So you can kill somebody who's a level 2 levels above you. And we play occasionally with a guy called Ink, who's incredibly good at the game. He's just savant level excellent. So obviously we get matched with people who are just murder bots, basically. And very occasionally, if I play enough matches, I will land the last shot on somebody he softened up for me. and I might kill them. And suddenly, boom, my elo is way beyond my actual abilities. And then when I go and play with Jim, who is still better than me, but more appreciably a similar level, we end up just getting pounded for a good 2 weeks solid before we can actually play people who are even within our realm. And it feels awful, actually. Like, I don't know. They clearly haven't solved the matchmaking as a problem, because it just feels punishing. Like we occasionally scrape a win, and then it's just 2 weeks of just being absolutely blatted by people who we shouldn't be ever matched against, and it makes me sad.
That's kind of weird because I get that experience, but like I haven't really noticed a similar cadence in my own play, really. Like I predominantly just play with Paul, Scott Canavan, friend of pod, and we go through obviously periods of feast and famine in terms of wins and losses, but they feel fairly evenly distributed. And I don't know if that just comes from playing with the same person a lot, so we probably have a fairly stable elo. But like, I don't know. Somewhat, I'd be interested to figure that out, because I also know that you tend to play a lot more cautiously than we do. Like we have quite fast games, like we're quite smash and grabby, and we do quite frequently make off with bounties and escape and stuff. But I wonder to what extent that comes from like, and that maybe helps in a way because it means maybe that more games are getting done, so the experience averages out. I don't know. I genuinely don't. Just sort of interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I also think maybe because you have a certain Zen attitude towards the equipment you have. Like you'll just take whatever equipment the character has, whereas I feel like I need to massage my inventory so I have the right tools each time, which means which isn't a better way to play. I'm not saying that, but it's much more costly. Because you're spending so much more money to set up a character, which then makes you naturally slightly more cautious, I think, about losing them. So
that makes sense.
But
I tend to pick the cowboy with the funniest name.
But also, yeah, that is a good method. But also up until the last patch, it was a game in which long guns were vastly overpowered over the sort of short to mid range, unless you had a super short range shotgun. And now things have evened up a lot more. So actually, I have been playing quite a lot more aggressively than in the past, because suddenly there's a much greater range of playstyles that are actually viable, I think, and more cheaply as well. I think they've done a great job rebalancing the weapons actually in the last patch. It's very cool. I don't know. Sorry, I took that question and I turned it into an opportunity just to talk about fucking Hunt Showdown.
That's all right.
But to be honest, you're lucky that doesn't happen with every question. So there you go.
It's so gratifying to see you embrace a game in the way that I feel about the games that I won't stop fucking talking about. And I mean that genuinely. You know, it's a good place to be when something fascinates you like that. And Hunt is a very worthy game for it. It's very, very good.
Yeah, I do love it. Would you like a
Alex?
different question? Oh, sorry, Alex.
Oh,
yeah.
I was going to ask Alex if he's ever experienced rage.
No.
He's the most
No.
temperate man.
I don't know. My children managed to inspire rage in me. I do get annoyed with games, but it's so temporal, and I just switch off. It makes me just want to switch it off, so I do, and then I don't tend to do sort of destructive things as a result, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, I don't really. I think we've had that question before, like how many pads have you smashed? And the answer is none.
Yeah, quite a
Yet.
few.
But maybe I'm doing a Chris and just bottling it all up. So
Oh yeah, Alex, I can tell.
I mean, if your evident physical degradation is not a sign of the withering of your soul, then I don't know.
Yeah, the paper-like skin that's stretched, torn across the skull.
You should get
one day we're just gonna we're just gonna hear like a bong, and the phrase "humanity restored" will appear, and you'll just look at right. Anyway, can we have another question, Martin?
Yes. Friend from Discord, TJ Howes says, "Hello. When I was small,
hello.
When I was small, I played a 16-bit Windows game called Warpath. It was a 2D game set in space, upgradable ships, diplomacy, combat, mining, colonization, etc. The usual. You could mine resources from uninhabited planets and sell the resources to inhabited ones. The price you got for your cargo was inversely proportional to the resources the planet already had. The less they had, the more they'd pay. You could also colonize uninhabited planets with a kind of humanity bomb. I pretty quickly worked out the winning strategy was to siphon off every last useful atom from a planet, dump some colonists on it, and then sell their planet's resources back to them at exorbitant prices. What's the most ruthlessly capitalist thing you've done in a game?
Why do those people have money? That's my question.
Yeah. Just bottle caps. It's just that's all they're giving you. So your empire is kind of resting on this kind of crap that these poor disenfranchised people are using in lieu of proper money.
And in the game. Doesn't make any sense. Don't know why I said it. I'm sure there's a lot of examples of this. I think the thing that sprung to my mind recently has been Animal Crossing. And this is probably not too terribly egregious, really, but I found myself there are opportunities because it has a nice sort of economic mechanism whereby after you have found something once or come across a recipe once or an item once or a fossil once, you probably don't need it. So it's a perfect opportunity to create giveaway zones in your island, which is what a lot of the very Pip does and her friends do, and very active players who are always visiting each other do. You have a little zone where people can stop by on their way back to the airport and take a present home with them or leave something for someone else. And it's all very it's lovely and genuinely collective and fun and wholesome. But I don't enjoy I don't enjoy clutter very much at all. Like I have a bit of the old kind of neat freak about me, and I quite like my islands that don't have stuff lying around. And I think I've said on this on the Animal Crossing pods, I quite like to not ever have a full inventory or be storing things I don't need. I kind of like things to be tidy and without loads of unnecessary possessions, which is not at all how I am in real life. What it is, it's just the psychic damage it causes is like an ongoing damage over time. But in the game, I can at least do something about it. I could do something about it in real life as well, but I won't. In the game, what I can do is just if I find the superfluous thing, I just sell it to the little raccoons, honestly. And it's like I know that what the game is doing is setting up a mechanic whereby I find value in it once and I enjoy that, or I give it to the museum or something, and then everything else is there as a little dangling prompt for me to reach out to somebody else and barter and trade and share each other's lives, and I don't want to, and so I won't. So I sell them all to a raccoon for not very much money.
Chris, do you and Pip share the same console, or do you play totally
No,
separate?
no. No, no. I mean, and no, no. No, and the reason for that isn't like negative or anything. It's that Animal Crossing is probably Pip's favorite game ever, and the thought that we'd be able to successfully share a console and give her another time to play it it's not possible. We have, in fact, I got her the Animal Crossing Switch as a late belated birthday gift because I knew that she would appreciate it and that it would give her, the run of her own Animal Crossing island, but also because it means that I would ever see my Switch again.
So I think I talked about it maybe last week or the week before. Our family is all on one island. My son Jack is not playing, but my daughter Hester and wife Hannah are playing. So it's the three of us playing, and so Hannah's very so regarding kind of horrible capitalistic selfish behavior. Hannah's very egalitarian. Whenever there is one of those glowy patches on the ground, where if you dig up that patch you get 1,000 bells, she will always bury 10,000 bells in its place. And then when the tree that grows as a result of that burial, bearing 3 bags of however many bells it is, 10,000 each.
10,000 each, yeah.
Yeah, it triples it, doesn't it? So if you put 1,000 back, that's right, you get 3 1,000s. Yeah, so and she intends those 3 bags that grow from its boughs to be shared between the 3 of us playing. So my daughter Hester steals all of the money on the trees. Hannah will sometimes, if Hannah gets to the tree first, she'll shake it. All 3 fall down, and she'll take one of them. There'll be 2 left there. Hester will just hoover them up. Hannah shouts to her. If ever I see one of the glowy patches, I just take the 1,000 and dig it back. It's like cover it over. Can't be bothered with another fucking tree. Take the money now. Hannah doesn't like that at all. So, but I still think that I'm better than Hester because she actually steals. I only steal the potential for money. So I think that I am better, I would say. Hannah is blameless and pure in all ways. So, like she's just better than all of us. So also another thing in the game, obviously, with Chris, you can build ramps and bridges and stuff. And when you cite those building projects, there's a little guy called a gyroid sits there, and he says, "Hey, buddy, give me 200,000 bells and to complete this project." And Hannah basically funds everything because I can't be bothered, and Hester blows all her money on outfits and random crap, like an aluminium briefcase which was 10,000 bells last night. You open it and it's full of gold, but of course the gold it's just decorative, and she just blows her money on crap. And that's basically an accurate rendition of what you're like in real life too.
That's the magic of the game. I'm afraid of my things, and I would rather sell them to a little raccoon than give them to a friend. Because the raccoon is closer. The raccoon in this analogy is a bin.
I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
Marsh, have you done a bad capitalism?
No. I think a lot of games. I think a lot of games are just incredibly capitalist in their structure. I think Minecraft, for example. I mean, nearly all games, but certainly Minecraft in particular, is acquisitive in its nature. It sees the world as just resources to be exploited, and you essentially strip mine everything and turn it into wealth, or do as you wish with it. And that seems to be just how games. There is a certain sort of player-centric nature to games, which is unavoidable, which I think just chimes almost exactly with the way that capitalism perceives the self as the ultimate mover, the self-interest. And I think a lot of games end up being structured like that. I'd be interested to play games which were designed from the ground up with some other system of commerce or social organization as maybe not literally represented, but as their sort of the inspiration for the way that the mechanics distribute resources and incentivize their usage.
I've just started playing Pathologic 2.
Oh yeah.
Which I mean, haven't played nearly enough to be able to really comment on very deeply. But in that game, you barter with people, so everything that you pick up, from loaves of bread to bottles to revolver bullets, has a barter value, which is it's basically just it's a monetary value, but you barter the object to be able to get other objects. There is no money. You don't never convert anything into money, and I understand, and I'm starting to see it, that the survival mechanics in the game feel punitive. Like, you are always hungry, you are always thirsty, and you are constantly having to weigh up the value of having a revolver or to having some food that you meant to give to a character in the game, and weighing up that for getting some food with it instead. And so therefore it's not capitalistic in the sense it's very survival based. Like, I suppose it's sort of close to capitalism, but it's mostly, what can I possibly do to survive in this situation, which I think is maybe a subtle difference.
Well, those are all the questions that we had time for. If you'd like to send us a question, you can do so at questions@crateandcrowbar.com, or you can tweet us at crateandcrowbar. These podcasts are uploaded as videos to YouTube, and you can find other nonsense by us there as well. The address for that is youtube.com/crateandcrowbar. Thanks as always to our lovely Patreon backers. You can back us too, if you so wish, at patreon.com/crateandcrowbar, or you can simply join our extraordinarily lovely Discord community, the link for which is on our website, crateandcrowbar.com. And that is the end of the podcast. I've been Marsh Davis.
I've been Chris Thurston. Don't know why I said it like that. I'm sorry.
Chris Thurston, and I'm Alex Wiltshire.
Lovely.
Thanks for listening,
everybody.
It is fun, isn't it? A bit of silence.